So, welcome back, everyone. Uh, I will be your session lead for this fourth theme on capacity development. And I will now start with the keynote speech of this theme. So, it is a fact that we think about the Earth normally as we got the lithosphere, the hydrosphere, the biosphere, the atmosphere, but actually we need to think about the Earth system, and now we are realizing about the effects and the impacts we, human beings, are having on the whole system. For many years, the oceans, in our case, the oceans were thought like, well, they were immense, they were inexhaustible, they were impervious to the effects of our activities. And now we are having indications that is not such. So we have to look at the whole picture and we have to consider the effects of what we do on the Earth system. As for the capacity development, we always say it's a cross-cutting activity. And we know that in order to realize the Sustainable Development Goals, we go through policy, and for that we need the proper assessment. And to have a proper and well-informed assessment, we need science, and that science will build upon observations. And when we think in terms of capacity development, we are thinking in capacity development in all these dimensions. As a matter of fact, this is a quite simple cartoon. So from data, we produce information. And with data and information, we create knowledge, we produce knowledge. And only through knowledge, we can inform decision makers. So in a way, science for sustainability is based on what we can call the knowledge triangle. So we have innovation and technology. But innovation and technology has a direct relationship with marine scientific research. New innovations help develop new marine scientific research. Questions from the marine scientific research domain trigger developments in technology and innovation. But the third aspect of this triangle is capacity development and education. So we need to put all this together. We need to consider everything. And this is an old discussion perhaps for some of us, capacity development or capacity building. So we rather prefer to talk about capacity development because we are taking the existing strengths and capacities while at the same time we are considering and addressing the deficits. We are developing capacities. It's not that we don't have them. Probably we have to further develop them. So I've been wise enough to use this image from a report from ISS about what is capacity development, which is very much in line with what IOC considers capacity development. So the components of this capacity development, the inputs, and there we have knowledge, we have skills, systems, structures, processes, values, resources, powers. And with all that, we can develop capacity, and this capacity needs to be developed at 3 different levels. We need to develop capacity at a societal level. We need to develop capacity at the organizational level. And of course, we need to develop capacity at the individual level. So we have to address all 3 of them. And this is not an easy task. So it's not linear, it's a complex situation. When we think about our domain, we need to develop capacity to collect data. But once we collect data, then we say, okay, but we would like to access the data. So do we have the capacity to access the data? And some people would say, okay, but I would like to have free and open access to data, and that's it. But that's not enough, because I need to develop the capacity to analyze the data, how to use the data. And once I've used it, I need to be able to synthesize it. And once I've done that, perhaps I will have to go outside my usual domain, my usual group of peers, because I will be developing applications. I will be giving solutions. And we also need to develop capacity in terms of communication and awareness. And I will mention something more in a few more slides. So you will see this figure many times, but in the end, these are the 6 basic functions of IOC as per the current medium-term strategy. So as you see, from building scientific knowledge through applying knowledge for societal benefit to improving governance, we are working with ocean research, observing systems and data management. We have services like the early warning systems, assessment and information for policy development, and sustainable management and governance. But at the center of this, at a very tenet of IOC, we have capacity development. So this is the important message here. Capacity development is at the center of all IOC functions. IOC has developed a medium-term strategy for capacity development. And this strategy, this capacity development, has to be seen in its very different dimensions. It's a multi-dimensional thing. Normally people think that capacity development is just a training course or a workshop. But when you look at this medium-term strategy, it's organized in 6 outputs. This dimension is developing human resources. That's one thing. But also having access to physical infrastructure, that's another dimension of the capacity development. Realizing and developing ocean research to inform decision makers to get to the policies to finally attain sustainable development. That's one of the outputs and one of the dimensions of the capacity development. Sustained long-term resource mobilization. As I said in the previous slide, visibility and awareness, communication, that's also part of this capacity development strategy and one of the dimensions we need to consider. And finally, the 6th dimension, global, regional, and sub-regional mechanisms being strengthened. And that will help us to attain what's at the center there. It's capacity development, and in our case, the transfer of marine technology. So this medium-term strategy has the 6 outputs, and it's been outlined into 13 activities and 23 actions. And so we have some good examples, some success stories, and one of them is intimately related to IODE. IODE has been working in capacity development since its inception. But in the early 80s, we had training activities that were ad hoc activities when someone was trying to establish a data center, for example. But as things evolved, technology evolved, IODE started thinking into different ways to streamline this capacity development efforts. So by the end of the 80s, by 1989, we started with this project, with this initiative, IODE in Africa. So we were putting together African countries. We had support from the government of Flanders, the Kingdom of Belgium, and we started developing this ocean data and information network system. And started with IODE in Africa, and started streamlining our capacity development efforts. And at that time, we were mainly focused on data and information management. But then by 1991, we had some basic software and tools that were distributed in floppy disks. and that was Ocean PC. So later, with the evolution of technology, by 1997, we started having some other contents. We started moving into HTML, and we had Resource Kit, and Resource Kit came in a CD. And then we moved into Ocean Teacher by 2001, and we were changing the whole concept, and you will hear more about this in this session. But we had started with Ocean Teacher, we changed the concept, we opened our minds into other domains, and we came up by 2009 to Ocean Teacher Academy, and since 2014 to Ocean Teacher Global Academy. And now it's no longer just data and information management, it's a platform that it's open to other IOC programs, and that has been used by other programs and organizations outside IOC too. So this is one of the success stories of how we have moved throughout time in terms of capacity development. Now, as for Ocean Teacher Global Academy, and our colleague Claudia Delgado will be able to explain this better than me, now we have this network of regional training centers. We have 7 active training centers and 2 candidates throughout this decade and a half. We have more than 2,500 people that has received training in about 134 member states. We have almost 5,000 registered users, and very recently the Ocean Teacher Global Academy received the ISO Learning Services Provider certificate. So we are doing good. We're doing good in using this as a platform for self-training, for face-to-face training, for distance learning. And it's serving not only the SDG 14, but multiple Sustainable Development Goals. But as I said, this is one of the success stories. In a recent meeting, we had this presentation from regional programs, and we got this slide. In the last 2 years, in terms of coastal area management, area-based management tools, marine spatial planning, and the work with large marine ecosystems, there have been trainings in 20 different countries and in 4 languages, more than 3,000 beneficiaries from 98 different countries. With, in the case of marine spatial planning, the documents available in English, French, and Spanish, and all training materials, as it happens with Ocean Teacher Global Academy, are fully available before, during, and after the training. So we are looking at a huge effort with great results. But in any case, I told you IOC had developed this capacity development strategy, and the next step was we need the implementation plan. So when thinking about the implementation plan of the strategy, the first step was to conduct a gap analysis, and that gap analysis was started from the global and regional points of view, from all IOC programs and IOC regions. So we had the first image. But the IOC Assembly decided 2 years ago to establish a group of experts in capacity development to assist into the work of the development of the implementation plan. This group had a first meeting March last year, and we found out the following. This gap analysis was considering the points of view of the global programs, regional subsidiary bodies, and there was a question, what happens with those countries or member states that are not currently part of a regional subsidiary body? What if they are within a region, but we're not able to participate in the activities of that regional subsidiary body? Are we capturing the needs and requirements in terms of capacity development? Is our gap analysis complete? So one of the decisions was to create a task team, an intersessional task team, to identify the capacity development needs of member states, IOC member states, in relation to the CD strategy, and looking in particular at small island developing states and least developed countries, as well as to member states that are not included in IOC regional bodies. But there was a second question that was addressed by this group of experts. And we've been working around this idea for many years. Perhaps you know IOC has published some 15 years ago the IOC criterion guidelines for the transfer of marine technology, which included the concept of a clearinghouse mechanism for this transfer of marine technology. And this clearinghouse and this transfer of marine technology is intimately related to the capacity development, so it made sense to have the discussion within this group of experts, and we had a second task team on implementation of a clearinghouse mechanism portal and related activities. So these two task groups worked together, developed a survey. The survey was circulated last year, and now I'm going through some of the results of this survey I will be sharing with you today. Just for starters, we received something like 47 responses. On the graph in the top right, you will see that we received information from IOC Africa, from Westpac, from IODE, some responses from IOC India, and a quarter of the responses came from member states that are not part of any of these regional bodies. And the survey has several questions, but what you can see on the bars on the left, when they were asked, well, can you identify the 5 most important capacity development needs in your country? In this, there was not one. You look at them and say, okay, it seemed like everything was important. There was no one critical issue. And it went from, okay, higher education is important, advanced professional development, access to laboratories, or data access and management, or digital infrastructure, or we need support for international partnerships, or for the development of a national ocean research policy. So it seems that all the items were relevant. But I said, I'm sharing with you some of the results. Then one other question was, okay, and what would you consider as essential or very useful or not fundamental in terms of developing capacity in human resources? So from the responses, I took the top 5 from the essential and very useful categories. So in the case of the essential, the top 5 starts with training courses, workshops, and summer schools. The second response with more hits was onboard research vessel-based training. Then we had internship and fellowship programs, travel grant funds, and regional training and research centers. Those were the top 5 in the essential category. As for the very useful, the top 5 started with sharing of training materials, regional training and research centers, a closer relationship between UNESCO chairs and IOC, the development of mentoring programs, and a consortia of higher education at a country or regional level. Another question was, what do you think it's important or critical to increase visibility and awareness of ocean research in your country? And we had 41% of the responses saying communicating ocean science research to policymakers. Second was effective public communication in ocean research institutions. And third, it was IOC ocean literacy, community of practice, to have a community of practice in terms of ocean literacy. As for information portals, which were identified, some of them or several of them directly within IODE, but we got Goose, Ocean Expert, OBIS, OTGA. You've got the list. The thing was, when we asked about the decade, it was just like at the beginning, no one clear response, no one clear answer, but it seems that we had 3 items that got a little bit more of attention: comprehensive ocean observing system, quantitative understanding of ocean ecosystems and their functions, and capacity development, transferring technology, training and education, ocean literacy. So we're running out of time. I will be rushing through the last slides. So we went into the matter of the clearinghouse mechanism. Of course, all aspects of the clearinghouse were considered important. Not one was being the most critical. But the important thing is that they all agreed that from the proposals, what they thought was what we need is a hybrid model to respond to the needs of a clearinghouse mechanism. And hopefully by March, April this year, we will have available the prototype of the clearinghouse mechanism, taking into account the IOC CD calendar, information and research vessels, document repository based on ocean docs, ocean experts, and products. Of course, you have seen ARIS. You may think that the contents of ARIS looks like the clearinghouse mechanism, but in fact is basic information that will provide input for the clearinghouse mechanism. We need to work more in communicating with different communities among ourselves, with decision makers, and with the general public, and make them understand what's the return on investment. Because we've seen this image Vladimir showed us this morning. The ocean could be the 7th world economy with a gross marine product of 2.5 trillion US dollars, probably 3/4 of that depending on healthy oceans. But that depends on ocean literacy, and this is my last slide. Ocean literacy is about people understanding what ocean services are, how we live together with the ocean, what impact we have on the oceans, but also explaining, and that's our responsibility as community, what's the problem, for example, with rig tides. Normal guy does not need to understand the coastal processes. He needs to know that this is a dangerous place, but it's for us to develop this type of information for the global or the general public, but also to have tsunami-ready communities. And for that, we need ocean literacy at all levels. And with that, Madam Chair, slightly off time. Thank you very much.